So venture capital is essentially rocket fuel for a company. And what venture capitalists typically like to see before investing into a company is that they have a solid team, an established team that's able to run the basic operations of the company, that there is a product that is proven, it's been de-risked, and that it has some traction, that there's validation, that there is an audience for it, and that ideally the founders have identified channels by which they can reach that audience so that when an investment is made, you already know that putting money in those those channels works, and that investment may go towards other things like expanding the team because you already have identified, hey, there's this product that people want and it's working. So that's really when venture capital comes in. That said, it is still high risk, and so a lot of times founders have a kind of preconceived notion that the job of a venture capitalist is to take high risk, and they think that means that even if there's gaps in the team product or the traction of that product, that's just part of the risk to take. But in actuality, even with the best teams, the best product, the best early traction, all kinds of things can go wrong that can prevent a company from surviving. And so it's still even high risk with all of those factors in place. So here's a quote that I like to share from Fred Wilson. He has a blog called ABC, and it's just a classic. He blogs pretty much every day and has for a very, very long time. And so this blog is a rich repository of knowledge and information around the venture capital industry. And so this is one of the things he says. In my experience, it'll generally take 3 to 4 rounds of equity capital to finance the business, and 20 to 25% of the company to recruit and retain a management team. That will typically leave the founder or founding team with 10 to 20% of the business when it's all said and done. So just going back to where it says 20 to 25% of the company to recruit and retain a management team, what's meant by that is like an option pool, a set aside of the equity in your company or a piece of the pie that is allocated to recruit like really skilled, executive founding team members that can help grow the company. This is just an example of founder dilution, and it's a good time to introduce the concept of cap table management. All right, so basically a cap table is the place where you manage how many shares in your company have been allocated, any dilution that takes place. With some tools like Carta, which is very popular with startups these days, you can actually model what your cap table would look like if you took an additional round for a certain amount. So when you're a startup, let me move this aside so I can. When you're a startup, your company basically has zero valuation, right? And if you've allocated an option pool, like we talked about earlier, to recruit talent, then let's just assume that the founder share of the startup is like 74%. Your value is nothing, right? And so this just walks through some examples of what your valuation, your founder share, and the founder value of those shares would be in these prospective different rounds. And so, what I like to highlight in this scenario is that if you take every one of those bars as like a pie, right? It's better to have like a fraction of a significant pie than to have 100% of a pie that has no value. Now, when you're in the startup stage, the valuation is not always hard and fast, especially in the earliest stage. The valuation is really a function of how much ownership the investor has for the amount that they invest. And then as you gain traction and you have like key performance indicators, and you can perform cohort analysis to see how your retention rate and things like that, then you have metrics that evaluation can be generated by, looking at revenue and what the cost of acquisition is and the lifetime value. You can start to derive, a more concrete idea of what a valuation could be, but it's not like in the public markets when you're looking at like PE ratios or these other ways of valuing a company. It's more so a function of investment and ownership. So again, if you just look on the right side here, at the Series B, and this is just an example, it varies company by company and scenario by scenario. But if you look at the valuation here at 32 million, founder shares have gone down to 36, but the value of those shares is now 11.8 5 million, right? So again, better to have like a smaller piece of something valuable than 100% of nothing.